It's finally spring, the foxhole blooms with your sex and relationship questions. Alix Fox is here. Hello.
I am here and I'm ready to make more of a splash than a pool party on Poseidon's own mega yacht.
What have you been up to this month?
I had a talk with a sex toy company called Kiiroo. They were one of the first companies pioneering teledildonics, the idea of sex toys that were internet enabled.
To assist in a long distance relationship.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Pen pals with benefits.
Pen pals. They then moved into male specific toys and they're now broadening their range to do some more couple stuff. But one of the things that we focused our conversation on is how much, especially since the pandemic, cam girls, OnlyFans shows have affected the R&D of sex toys. And it was really fascinating. If you are, for example, Randy Candy, who's about to do a sex marathon.
It's a bit of a flight of imagination for me.
But you're about to do some marathon sex show on your bitch stream or whatever the hell you call it for your followers. You're going to need your toys that you're using to go the distance. You can't afford for the batteries to run dry or for them needing to be plugged in for 16 hours in between shows. So companies like Kiiroo are actively designing toys that can run at high speed.
Withstand live streaming.
Yeah, for an 8-hour stream.
Is that how long people sit there with a sex toy in?
Bits of me would be so concave that you could spelunk down them after that, I think. My God.
Goodness.
Your chaffing should be chafed, wouldn't it? Yeah. But that's another aspect of it. They're designing new materials and new shapes that are intended to be comfortable for repeated long-term use. And all of these benefits are then getting passed on to the consumer who isn't a sex professional. Another thing that they told me about, which a light bulb finally went off in my head, appropriately enough.
Yeah, it could be one of their products.
Well, lighting is something that I have seen crop up more and more in sex toys. Iroha, a Japanese company, do this brilliant little egg-shaped vibrator that doubles as a floating light in your bath. So it helps you relax in more than one way. But I'd also seen toys that pretty much look like a laser quest or like some kind of dick-based disco, like lots of flashing, lots of different colours, and I couldn't really understand quite what the appeal of something so literally flashy was.
Oh, so that's a cam girls thing as well, is it?
Yeah, and it turns out it's a camming thing.
Right.
If you are somebody, for example, who is shooting in a room that's entirely bedecked with pink, then the ability to make your toy flash in the same colour as your surroundings.
Yes.
Yeah,
your Canva template.
Yeah, it's got great visual appeal. There are toys that Kiiroo making where they have the ability to light up in various different flag colours. But again, like this extreme customization is going to come down the pipeline, if you will, from the professional to the consumer's bedroom.
Extraordinary implications that Sir Tim Berners-Lee could just never have imagined. Let's take your questions of sex. This one comes from a woman in her 30s who says, Ollie, I've been with my partner over 10 years. I've always had quite large and sensitive boobs. And we both always really enjoyed them being a really significant part of our sex life. Nipple play, caressing, sucking, even experimenting with nipple clamps and suction toys over the years. Fast forward to 10 months ago, I gave birth to our first child. She's beautiful and a lot of fun, but obviously with sleep deprivation and busyness, mine and my partner's sex life took a bit of a hit. Now she's nearing 1, though, things are getting easier. She's in a room of her own now rather than being in a cot in our bedroom, so we're starting to try and rev things up again. However, I'm finding my relationship with my boobs has really changed. My daughter is breastfed, and overall I found this a really positive thing. It really helped me bond with her after a pretty traumatic birth, and I like knowing that she's getting all the health benefits from my milk. I'd like to continue breastfeeding until she's 2, as that's what the World Health Organization recommends. But alongside this, my boobs have been through a lot. My daughter often scratches and pinches at them while she feeds. And since getting teeth, we've had a few biting incidents, some that have even drawn blood. I am finding now that I'm struggling to enjoy my partner playing with my boobs during sex. Sucking feels a bit odd now, and sometimes being touched there just feels unpleasantly overwhelming. I'm finding if my partner tries to initiate sex by touching my boobs, I'm just clamming up, and this is getting me down, as I used to love this. My partner is lovely and really understanding and supportive, but Alix, help me enjoy that part of sex again.
Oh, this is a heartbreaker, isn't it? The Babylons have become more like Hades by the sounds of things.
So relatable, I can imagine, for so many women who breastfeed and are in this situation. Like, how are you supposed to go from having these fun bags that are there for sex to having these life-giving
sandbags?
Organs.
Sometimes they get very, very heavy, don't they? Yeah.
And switch back again. I mean, it's the whole Madonna whore thing, isn't it? Like, just mentally for people, making that switch is difficult.
Incredibly so. Now, I am acutely aware that I am not a woman who has breastfed. I have dated in the distant past some man babies who were so immature that I think they pretty much expected that from me. But actually breastfeeding is an experience I've had. So I cast my net out and drew in some of my brilliant fellow specialists who have more expertise in this area than me. A really lovely friend of mine called Emily Wardle is a breastfeeding peer support worker, and she's also a mother of two. While she can't speak for everybody, it is likely that this sensation and this problem will go away in time. And she underlined that when you're in the middle of breastfeeding, it can feel like that breastfeeding relationship is going to go on forever.
Yeah.
Especially your first time, it just feels so overwhelming. It's a full-time job. It feels like it's going to go on for eternity. You're tired, you're hormonal. So as well as just grieving the fact that your sex life has changed and what used to be a real go-to, easy, hardwired source of pleasure has now become more of a challenge, that grief is going to feel more acute because your emotions are through the roof. One thing that she said helped her just feel a little bit more calm about this is that what you're experiencing, in a way, is your body trying to protect the breastfeeding relationship that you have with your child.
Yes. From your body's point of view, you've done the sex bit. I mean, you're now the mum.
And bodies can do some pretty atavistic, feral, Stone Age things to do with pregnancy and breastfeeding and childcare. But just reminding yourself that although the fact that this is happening is definitely upsetting, it doesn't necessarily mean that something is going wrong. It's part of the journey. Yes, it's difficult, but it's not disastrous. It's not unusual. And to some degree, it's not really unexpected.
And actually the physical sensation at some point, it will change again.
It's likely to. Another person I spoke to, Lucy Plummer, she's a coordinator these days at Froome Birth Talk. She orchestrates mental health support for new parents, pregnant people, and people who've been through baby loss. She is the founder of the Real Birth podcast. Lucy has actually been through this herself, but in her case, it was almost more of a shock because she, again, is a mother of two. And when she had her first son, Rufus, she said that breastfeeding was really quite easy and the whole experience felt pretty fun. She didn't really have any pain or issues or sensitivity. And both she and her husband just found the whole thing quite novel and exciting. But then when her second son, Felix, was born, she, out of nowhere, experienced something called breastfeeding aversion, a condition where the idea of and the sensation of breastfeeding, even if you're really committed to doing that for your child and you really want to, produces feelings of ghastliness. People describe it as extreme skin crawling, of nausea, of just being utterly repelled by the sensations. Any sucking, any scratching, the whole thing just makes them feel ghastly, really, really horrible.
I've definitely encountered a lot of parents who have a kind of grim, like, body horror after birth about lots of things.
Yeah.
Just because you're just like, what just happened?
I think particularly when it comes to breastfeeding, though, because it's so associated with nurturing and bonding with your child, and particularly if, in Lucy's case, you've had a really positive experience with that before, it must be such a horrible shock to suddenly find the depths of your soul in revolt and being revolted by this practice. I mean, that's got to fuck with your head, hasn't it? It was a horrible shock for her. She and her partner had been really into breast play. For her, she said there really wasn't anything that she could do to reinstate the enjoyment of breast play while she was breastfeeding. So the best thing for her, and it might be the best thing for this couple too, was just to take the boobs off the table for a while. A bit like a chicken fan in Veganuary, take the breasts off the table for a bit. And see this perhaps, rather than framing it as a loss, see it as an opportunity to experiment with other play, other practices, other parts of the body that might feel great.
Which, by the way, I imagine your partner's going to be pretty up for, considering that they've also been next to you whilst you haven't been having sex for a year, right? I mean, it might be traumatic that it's not what it used to be, but it's something. You know, you've had a year where you've clearly not been having much sex at all.
Yes, and it gives me a lot of heart and hope that we have evidence here that this is an experimental couple. They've been together a decade, but they've tried like suction devices and, nipple clamps and stuff. They're open-minded. They're good at exploration and adventure. So whilst I'm not saying it's wrong to grieve this loss, feel those feelings, but perhaps also couple them with the idea that this is an opportunity to share something new together. For some people, the boobs never do feel the same. I'm going to be completely honest. Lucy says that for her currently, she doesn't think she'll ever have the same relationship with her breasts, that her boobs themselves have changed. The way she feels about them, the way they feel to her, she doesn't think that is going to be ever like it was before. And she's made peace with that because she's found other ways of being sensual and sexual, and she's discovered new things. But then again, Emily says that for her, it did come back. So either way, right now, it might be a good opportunity to try different things. I consulted with a therapist called Rian Kavitz. She suggested maybe thinking about creating a pleasure map of the body. If you're not just going straight to the titties when you want to connect with each other, where else on the body might feel good? Is there another part that you can decide to explore? Think of it as going on holiday for a while, you know? Remember that terrain might still change as well. 10 months might feel right now like a very long time with your kid, but in the grand scheme of things, it's actually a very short period of time. So maybe keep this idea of mapping the body, of thinking about new areas. Think about that as a rolling process rather than a one and done experiment. I think it would be really good to intervene now, because if you carry on trying to make boobs happen and feeling bad about it, and probably your partner feeling bad about it as well, because they don't want you to be in pain or to see you shudder or recoil every time you're touched. If you keep pushing at those tits, that is going to create a big psychosexual boob down the line.
Yes.
Rianne did suggest that, and I don't mean this to sound trite, because asking a mother to a tiny child to create space for herself, I know sounds like a laughable concept, but if you can even carve out like an extra 5 or 10 minutes when you're in the bath or the shower, then connecting with your boobs yourself, having time to connect with your body on your terms.
So not necessarily in an erotic way, just like a sort of massage connection, but not feeding a baby either.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It might be just noticing whether a warm washcloth feels like a relief, or taking a little bit of time with a nice scented shower gel or something to touch that part of your body if you want to. It might be too painful at the moment, but just spending some time for you with a part of your body which for a lot of the rest of the day is in service to your child or is in attempted service to your sex life, reconnecting with that as a part of you can be a really important psychological part of this healing, really. It might also be the case that maybe the types of touch that worked in the past, or like maybe you were going straight for the nipple, or you liked squeezing.
Something strong, yeah.
Yeah, the suggestion of clamps and suction toys maybe hints that it was pretty rough in the past. Perhaps resorting to more sensual massage or strokes might work. Maybe temperature play, something like that's cold or that's warm might feel good. There's loads of options here. Don't give up on the boobs. Do consider putting them to one side for a while. You might need a weird bra to do that, but and try and see this as an opportunity to explore a different facet of sex rather than the titties for now, I reckon.
That sounds like fantastic advice. I was listening, though, as the male partner in this scenario or a similar scenario, thinking, okay, but how does this affect the partner of people who are breastfeeding too? Because for them too, what was sexy fun has changed.
It's not mentioned in this email, but it can be really common that when breasts are stimulated in bed and you are still breastfeeding, your partner is going to get a squirt to the face of milk. It's all going to go dairy. It's dairy in your diary, whether you want it or not. Some people find this exciting or just curious. It's interesting, it's intriguing.
But not necessarily sexy.
No, unfortunately, some partners do actively find that a turn-off. And how they deal with that themselves and how they express that potentially to their partner is a very sensitive subject, isn't it?
Well, expressing is a whole different thing.
Yeah. It's a nightmare, isn't it? The idea of your male partner pulling a face at the way your boobs look or feel or the way they're behaving in bed. I can imagine that being absolutely crushing for a woman. So for the male partner or for the non-breastfeeding partner, knowing how to deal with your own feelings and also be careful not to accidentally express them in the way that's going to do terrible harm to your partner's self-esteem is tricky. It's not very openly spoken about. I also think some non-breastfeeding partners struggle with reconciling the idea that they fancy a body part that they then see their kids suckling. Or there's some guilt and some shame and some confusion associated with the idea that you're attracted to breasts, but then you see your baby being fed by them. Like, it feels a bit... There are lots and lots of really complicated, nuanced feelings surrounding this, which is why it is important to have very compassionate, careful conversations about it. It might be that this couple, maybe both of them need to seek some therapy or some support from someone like a breastfeeding peer support worker or someone like Lucy.
Yeah.
The final thing we haven't spoken about, Ollie, is kind of the inverse of this issue.
What if your baby's put off because the breasts look too sexy?
I can't believe you said that. I love you for it. More that, rather than you struggling with your breasts being sexual because you're breastfeeding, more that you struggle with your child touching a part of your body that you consider to be sexual. And that can happen. There's a very normal thing that some kids do that has the extremely official sounding title of twiddling. This is when a baby is breastfeeding, they will paw at a nipple, they'll pull at it, they'll twiddle it in their hand. It's posited that this is an instinctive movement to try and stimulate the flow of breast milk, but it is just also something that kids do because they associate boobs with safety and with food and being close to their mum, and so holding on to a tit isn't a very natural, comforting thing for them to do. Having your child, though, fondle your breast rather than suckling it is really freaky for some women. It feels very difficult to them. It's very confronting. Sometimes older children do this as well. And once your child has stopped breastfeeding, if they're still reaching for your breasts for comfort, that can feel fucking weird.
Yes.
But no one really talks about it. And I think they need to.
Well, if you have a question of sex or relationships or breastfeeding, it seems,
get it off your chest by going to modernman.co.uk and hitting feedback.